So I want to build a router duplicator which has got the router here that slides like this, and then that slides like that. And for the actual mechanism, this is the design I came up with, and here's the router, which is going to be one of these Bosch Colt routers. And I made some one-to-one printouts of this thing for the shapes, and so this is, for instance, the part that mounts the router. And once I printed that, I realized this is actually pretty bulky, so I decided to narrow this a little bit, and I made another one-to-one printout. And so here I've got this much narrower now, so that gives me better sight lines, and I don't think the strength is going to be much of a problem. And I also added more details, so I'm going to use these templates to start making this pivoting mechanism that mounts the router. So that looks like the most efficient layout based on the scrap of plywood that I've got. I haven't glued these down yet because I want to do some of these cuts with a table saw without the template on there. But I know I should cut this part out roughly like so on the bandsaw, just to make optimal use of the wood. Now with the templates glued on, I'm just going to punch through some of the center holes so that I won't miss those if I screw it up. So this assembly needs to pivot, and I didn't actually draw the shaft in here, but I picked this shaft to go in here, and this is actually a metric size shaft. So I drilled a test hole using the nearest imperial size drill that I've got, and that actually fits quite snug, no play, and it still turns reasonably well. I didn't think it would fit that well, so I'd actually made a reamer by grinding a slot into the end of a shaft, and I was going to use that with a drill to expand the hole, but that turns out to be unnecessary. You might have to do that if your fit is not perfect. So now I'm going to drill a larger hole because I don't want the thread of that screw engaging, and I'm going to drill that to this depth. It's important to drill the hole before cutting the slot, because if I drilled it afterwards, it would get chewed up with that slot already there. So I just cut out the part for mounting the router. So my Bosch Colt router is going to mount in this hole here, and I'm going to cut this out, and there's going to be a screw in here. I've already drilled that hole, and that clamps it together to squeeze on that router. Now if you want to use a router other than the Bosch Colt router, what you can do is just measure the diameter of the body and then use a compass to just draw a circle on the template of the diameter of your router, and then cut to that line instead of the line that's on the plans. So that fit is awfully tight, but the aluminum from the router leaves some black marks where it rubbed, so I know where to tweak it. That's much better. So here's my side pieces, and let's put that together like so. And this now can pivot on the end like so. I still need to make the thing that connects on here, and for guiding it on the shaft that goes through here. These form a box back here, and that keeps this whole assembly from twisting like that. So this carriage mechanism is going to slide back and forth on a steel shaft, and to allow it to slide really easily, I'm going to have it essentially rolling on a set of bearings on three sides, And we're going to mount these bearings just by putting them on a bolt with a washer on here like so, sort of like I have with what's left of this drawing. And these bearings are really cheap. They're essentially rollerblade bearings, so they're relatively easily obtainable. I got mine out of some old rollerblade wheels. These are actually kind of worn out, and I got these for free, so it's relatively easy to get these bearings because for this machine I'm going to need quite a lot of these. So to get the 45-degree angle, these bolts are going to go into a trapezoidal piece of wood like that. So I've cut this on the table saw, that fits into here, and that's going to get glued against the bottom side of this piece. So that goes into here, and then this against here. So I'm going to glue that up before I drill it because the holes have to go through both parts. So while I'm waiting for the glue to dry, I finished up these pieces and I'm just going to screw those on here, just using some drywall screws. And while I'm still waiting for this glue to dry, I took the three pieces that go back in here and I also glued those together. I want that sub-assembly fairly stiff. So I'm going to have to drill some holes in there to mount the bearings on there like so. The critical part is where along here that hole goes. And I'm just going to use my drawing as a guide, so if I just put that on here against a one-to-one drawing, I can just take the center line from here and transfer that onto here and onto here. And now just using my fingers as a guide like that, I can move that back. And that tells me where the hole needs to line up. Now I'm going to thread this bolt straight into the wood, so I need a drill that's just a tiny bit smaller than the bolt. So in this case I'm going 1/64 smaller. This hardwood really doesn't have very much flexibility. If this was softer wood I'd use a smaller drill, but 1/64 down is going to make for a plenty tight fit already. So on the top there's these two rollers that hold it on there, but to make sure that this thing isn't just held on this pipe by gravity, there's going to be another roller on the bottom, and I just made this part here. The hole here is a little bit off center so that the bearing sticks out from here a little bit so that it doesn't rub against the wood. Now to keep it pressed against the pipe, it's going to pivot on a screw here, and there's going to be a block of wood glued on here and a screw through here to pull that up so that I can tighten this up, so there's going to be no play in this whole thing. So I've got this jigged up now. These are just tapped in, and I've clamped these so that they grab onto the pipe, and now I just need to get that block in the right place. So I'm just going to put a spacer where that hole is so that I'll get it exactly over that hole so that the screw lines up, but with a little bit of space left over so that I can still tighten it some more. Well, that was about 3 hours worth of workshop time now. So I'll finish that thing in another day and I'll shoot another video about that.